Incorporating drumming into their program. So we're excited to have two programs sharing what they are doing, and if anybody else is also using drumming in your programs, please let us know. We'd love to hear about it and share. So we're starting with Doran Blakeslee from Southwest Co-op.
Okay, well thank you. And I'm really excited about being here to talk a little bit about our DHH Drum Club, and I decided to call this Evolution of a DHH Drum Club because I'll explain a little bit more later. We are a drum club, which is not exactly a drum circle, and there are some distinctions, and I'll get into kind of what those distinctions are in a few minutes. It was kind of funny when I was looking for a picture to put on my first slide. I found this picture, and I realized that the guy in the picture looks like he's got quite a lot of hair, and he doesn't have any gray in his beard, and I feel like there's been some evolution as well for me. I had to stop and actually think about it, but I think this is my 6th year doing drum club with my deaf and hard of hearing students, and it's been exclusively with the students at the middle school. Haven't really ventured into trying to do something at the high school level, but they have a lot more going on there, and the facilities and the logistics of working that out would probably be a little bit more challenging. So let's go ahead and get started. Oh. All right, first, I thought I should talk a little bit about why did I start a DHH drum club. And at the time, we had left one site and we were transplanted into another middle school site. And it was very disheartening to me and to the students because at the former site, our students were very involved. They were involved with extracurricular sports. They had been involved with the drama club, and unfortunately when we made that switch to the new site, they didn't have the same kinds of opportunities. And as a social worker, that really bothered me, and I felt like they were really missing out on that important junior high school experience of being, starting to connect with peers and be a part of what's going on in the school. So one of the reasons why I did this was I thought, I guess if it's not happening, I need to make it happen, and I need to try to create something. So that was my response. Of course, a lot of our students, and my students for sure at that time, needed more positive social interaction. We always need that. I also was very aware that for the students who had taken some kind of music courses, that their experiences were really on a continuum. Some of the students had taken music class, and there were aspects of it that maybe they liked and they found beneficial and helpful. And there were other students who really had I don't want to say a negative experience, but didn't really come away from that feeling like it was maybe best suited to them, or there were the kinds of adaptations that could have been made. And some of the teachers have been great in really working with me and some of the other staff around, well, I have this activity, what can we do to sort of, have it work best for your DHH students? But of course, not every teacher is that open-minded or has that within their repertoire, or doesn't always have the time to consult. So it was something I felt like I wanted to provide them with an opportunity to do something that was music related, and make sure, hopefully, that they would have fun with it and have a positive experience. Also, drumming was and is a personal interest, and it's something that I knew I would enjoy doing with the students because, when you're staying after school and getting materials and planning what you're going to do, it's, there's a commitment there, and I wanted to make sure that this was something that I would really enjoy and have some passion for. So. Part of the inspiration for me, too, was, has anyone in the room heard of Evelyn Glennie? Okay, some of you have. I see a few hands here. Evelyn Glennie is a world-class concert-level professional percussionist. And she was born in Scotland, I believe. I hope I get some of these facts right. She is currently profoundly deaf. She was born hearing, and then in her youth, she lost her hearing to the point now where she, you know, on the audiogram, she would fall in that range of profoundly deaf, but she does, of course, hear different sounds. Before she lost her hearing, she had perfect pitch, which I don't know how many of you know what that means. She had that ability, and it's not something that we all have. It's pretty much, there's some research that shows you can maybe within a certain window help to develop that, but for the most part, I think the majority of people believe you're either born with it or you're not. And that's the ability to hear a tone and automatically be able to go, that's a C sharp. Or to hear a tone and go, oh, B flat. She had that prior to her losing her deafness, or losing her hearing, and becoming profoundly deaf. So, very interesting person. She continues to concertize. She travels the world. And if you want to check out her website, I really recommend it. It's right there, www.evelyn.co.uk. There's some amazing videos. On her website, she also has some articles that she has written to kind of respond to some of the questions and some of the feedback I think that she has gotten either from hearing people or the deaf community. A couple of quotes here that I just want to read real quickly. She talks about in her hearing essay, deafness is poorly understood in general. For instance, there's a common misconception that deaf people live in a world of silence. Understand the nature of deafness. First, one has to understand the nature of hearing. Hearing is basically a specialized form of touch. Sound is simply vibrating air which the ear picks up and converts to electrical signals which are interpreted by the brain. The sense of hearing is not the only sense that can do this. Touch can do this too. And she talks a lot about how she experiences sound, and she does that in a way which is beyond just her being able to hear it. For some reason, we tend to make a distinction between hearing a sound and feeling a vibration. In reality, they are the same thing. This, to me, I had heard about her before wanting to do my drum group, but hearing that, knowing the work that she does, I just felt like, you know, I've got a role model as well for my students, and somebody to say, you know, here's somebody who really has not let her deafness in any way hinder her from pursuing her goals. And she's been very successful. Just real quickly, she talks about, if you go on her website and read a little bit more about her biography, she talks about how when she was going through the process of losing her hearing, she spent hours and hours and hours in the music room with her music teacher with her hands against the wall while he played on these big timpani drums. And you can tune timpani drums. So one would be tuned a little bit sharper than the other one, and she would wait and listen and feel and sense with all that she was, and she got to the point where she was able to distinguish. That's a C sharp. That's a C. And she talks about how she has come to the point now, and this took years and years and years of training and study. She talks about how she feels deep, low vibrations in her legs and feet, and more mid-range in her chest and torso, and higher frequencies and tones in her head and neck. And I was talking with a percussionist friend of mine, and we were just kind of marveling about Evelyn Glennie, and most percussionists know her. She's very famous within the community. And I said, you know, it's just, I can't even imagine, you know, having that ability. And he's like, well, remember, she had perfect pitch. So she kind of had a head start there. But he said, you know, it is remarkable to think that she has so finely tuned her sensory system that she has perfect pitch throughout her body. You know, she's feeling it and hearing some of it and sensing it in different ways. She talks a lot about how she also is aware that she reacts and responds to acoustics in a room maybe a little bit differently than hearing people would. So she was a big inspiration for me. So I want to do this group, okay, I've got some inspiration, so do I go out and buy a bunch of drums and just start drumming, with all my students? Is that going to be a drum club? I didn't think that I knew enough to know that I don't really know what I'm doing here. It's an exciting idea and a fun prospect to think about, but I probably need to get some more training and learn a little bit more about what I'm doing. I drum a little bit just as a hobby. I'm a musician, I play some other instruments, but I knew I wasn't quite ready for this. So I went and got some training, and I'm going to talk just real briefly about the training that I was a part of. I went through a training through a DCM, which is Developmental Community Music, and it was a workshop kind of setting, and it was over the course of several days, and it was taught by Kalani, who is a professional drummer. He's also a certified music therapist. He's a professional performer. He's toured throughout the world playing with Yanni and some other big groups. He has developed what he calls a more holistic approach to the idea of teaching music-related events and activities. Not just drumming and drumming in a circle, but really looking at it and understanding it, analyzing it in terms of there are specific techniques that you want to use and understand, and theories behind what you choose to do or not choose to do. And then he's also really good in his workshops and training to teach you very specific tools, resources, and you do learn how to facilitate a drum circle. And I won't get into that because that's pretty involved, and that's a couple of days of a workshop kind of experience. But he also teaches how to play the Native American flute, how to do some sing-along with ukulele, and again, it's much more focused on the process and being in tune with people's experience, not so much the product, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I've taken his course actually 2 or 3 times, and I've made some friends, and I keep going back because I really enjoy it. He also has another training course which is called Pro Rhythms, which is a little bit different than what I'm going to talk about today, but if you're interested in finding out more about that, you can approach me later. That's more of a specific protocol kind of drumming experience that has health and wellness outcomes in mind specifically. So, what is a drum circle? I thought I should start there a little bit. A drum circle is a musical gathering, but a drum circle is more than just the instruments and the act of drumming. It is also the shared experience of the participants. The drums and the drumming are just vehicles that take the group to its final destination, a place where everyone has a voice and is empowered to use it, and where the creative spirit is shared by everyone in the circle. A drum circle is really a people circle. So you can imagine me being a social worker. This was the kind of drum group that made sense to me. This is the kind of drum group that I think, with some drumming skill, I can kind of get us drumming, but this is really understanding and looking at the process in a way that connects with me. Kalani talks about drum circles are a form of recreational music making, which means that the focus is not on performance, but rather on personal or group development and wellness, or just plain fun. We sort of, at the beginning of our drum club, we always sit down, we have circle time, and then we talk about the D, R, U, and M, and every year it changes a little bit what those letters mean, but this year D is do have fun. That's sort of my first standard rule. We're here to have fun. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. This is about coming together, being part of a community, enjoying the creative process, and hopefully walking away feeling a little bit better than we did, coming into it. A little bit more about recreational music making. It's less about playing tunes and more about tuning into our playfulness. Less about recreating what others have done before, and more about co-creating something in the moment. So there's that creative piece. Less about being on stage and more about reaching new stages of being. Less about tuning out the environment and more about tuning into your heart. And these are the kinds of things that I just feel I have seen happen with my students in so many ways. I've seen kids just blossom and flourish in ways that I never ever would have thought or anticipated with a DHH drum club experience. You know, kids, not every kid is strong academically, not every student is able to be good at sports, not every student, you know, but there's usually something in drum club, and I do my assessment piece too, and I kind of know what I need to provide for what students that will allow them to have a positive experience. So I think it's very flexible. When an entire group of people participate in the same process, a rhythmic web is created that serves to support and connect everyone in the group. One of the activities I do at the very beginning of the year is we sit in a circle and we talk about how we have to use our eyes, ears, and bodies as the tools for listening and cooperating. So we do that with an activity where I take a ball of string and I start out and I start to unwind the string, and then I throw it to someone opposite to me in the circle. And then they catch it and they hold on, they kind of wrap it around the finger, and then they have to throw it to someone, and on and on and on. And of course, by the end, what you have is everyone sitting around the circle with a piece of the string, but there's this wonderful spider web kind of design in the middle. And then we talk about, wow, look, we're all really connected. We're connected in a way where if I pull, you know, you feel it. And this is how it is to be part of a drum circle as well. You know, we want to have that feeling of we're really in this together, we're really connected, and we're really paying attention to what you're doing and then making a choice of how I'm going to respond based on that. This year I did something completely different. After we did the activity, this was a little silly, but we did it with a roll of toilet paper. So I took one end of the toilet paper and I threw it across the circle. We did the exact same activity, and we talked about the fragility of our connections and how easy it is to just have that kind of fall apart if you're not sensitive. And it was, you know, it was nice. I could tell it was really, they were getting it. And so now I can, when we're playing and we're in our circle doing drumming, I can say, okay, you know, is the string, are we connected? Is the string there, or did we break, you know, or was there a moment there that it felt like we weren't connecting? As far as what you do as a facilitator, there's a lot you can read and kind of study, and I only want to touch a little bit on what I do and what I try to think about. The role of a facilitator is you want to provide an atmosphere that helps people to feel welcome. You want them to be there. My students love drum group, which is wonderful, and they really give me a hard time if we have to cancel or something happens and we can't have it. They really look forward to it. And I like to think that part of that is because they all feel like it's fun and they get something out of it, and they enjoy themselves. Help participants to play music together. And again, for me, it's not so much the music, it's to participate together. We do a lot of things that are music games, rhythm-based activities. We're not necessarily making music because not everyone in the group would be able to maybe really be able to do that, for either because of their hearing loss or for other reasons, other disabilities or things that they struggle with. So, of course, present activities that are fun and accessible. And I've been really challenged some years with this one. Had students in the group who are in a wheelchair. So I really had to kind of think through, okay, what kind of shaker can we, and I'll show you some of the things that I have. You know, there are some different shakers that you can wrap around your hand and they're secure. So he could just move his hand and he could feel He could feel that vibration, and he could, hear maybe some of the tones that it was making, and it suited his level of being able to participate physically. Encourage creativity and cooperation, and of course foster a sense of appreciation. Just real quickly, there are lots of different kinds of drum circles, and I'm not going to get into all of this, but there's community drum circles, educational, training and development, and health and wellness. And the key thing here is, all of the different people out who do drum circles and do these different kinds of drum circles have very specific objectives in mind. And I am not someone who is doing a health and wellness drum circle. Now, I think that through my DHH Drum Club, there are some positive things that come out of that. I think that they feel positive self-esteem. I think that it helps to reduce their performance anxiety. I think it offers them an opportunity to be creative. But note to self, so as I was putting this together, I realized I want to be really careful about not misrepresenting the program, my abilities, or what my proposed outcomes are. DHH Drum Club is not music therapy, it's not music education. I have not written goals. Okay? It is not part of their IEP. This is extracurricular. It happens after school. I think a lot of what we do supports what my social work goals are for those students during the year, but it's a separate thing. Okay, why drums and drumming? Drumming can be quiet, loud, and everything in between. It can accommodate a range of hearing ability and hearing loss. Drumming is very visual. Drumming is something you can feel as well as hear. Drums are accessible to most people. And drums, I really believe this to be true, drums tend to draw people in rather than push people away. And the best proof of that is at a garage sale a couple summers ago, I found this really beat up old giant bass drum. If I bring that in the room and set it up in the corner, there's not a kid who can't walk, who isn't going to go over there and touch it and want to go right to it. So that's what we work for. Let's have our group, and at the end, if we're all kind of feeling like we're done with what we had planned, let's go play the bass drum. But it's hard to keep your hands off it. It's just it pulls people in. Why not only drums? We don't use just drums. Drums are from a large family of instruments. Why limit? Why limit yourself or anyone? Some students really prefer to start with something a little smaller and less intimidating. I do have some big African djembes. Well, for a student who's maybe a little bit more tentative or hesitant, that's going to feel intimidating and overwhelming. So you can pick up an egg shaker. You can pick up a couple pieces of stick and start with that. And I have seen kids start with something like that, and then as we go from week to week, want to go over to the big drums. Obviously, a variety of percussion instruments make a variety of sounds and vibrations. For my DHH students, it's really important to me to be very sensitive to how some of them are hearing the sounds, but some of them are only feeling the vibration, and some of them are somewhere in between. So I try to make sure that I've got a variety of percussion type things that will hopefully benefit all of them. Scarves and balloons also allow students to see rhythm visually. We do a lot of using scarves to count the rhythm because you can see it. You don't have to necessarily hear it, and if I'm far away, you might not feel it if I'm beating on my drum, but you can see it if I've got a scarf and I'm counting in 4/4 time or whatever. Also, multi-sensory percussion items. I've got a rain stick and a shaker that are see-through. And there are there are items out there that are really neat because you see it, you feel it, and you can hear it. And the students love that. They really all enjoy those instruments. So what do? We do all this stuff. We play drums, shakers, rattlesticks, bells, scrapers, rain sticks, thunder tubes. We clap, snap, stomp, march, step, dance, rap, sing, and drum on our bodies. We bounce balloons, we wave scarves, we stack cups, we pass egg shakers around in a circle. We mime, we gesture, we act, we conduct, and we listen with our eyes, ears, and bodies. We play music games, learn rhythms, explore new instruments, and learn about music and different cultures. But mostly we have fun. Again, that's really the point. I'm going to skip this because it's just kind of reiterating about how playing music is just one of the best ways for people to connect and share a common bond. Initially, again, I wanted this club for my DHH students because they were missing a sense of community. They had just been transplanted from one site to another building, and they weren't really connecting, you know, and I could see that the connections even amongst themselves, it wasn't as strong. So I really feel that playing music or during music-based kinds of activities really helps with that. Philosophy and approach of DCM, the structure of a drum circle music event is built upon the components that are essential to maximize a successful group process: inclusion, cooperation, and appreciation. And that's kind of my mantra. Those are the things I always think about as I'm putting together my lesson plan or list of potential activities, because you have ideas in mind and then you go with the flow and you see what works and then you change it up. I'm not going to go through all of this because I think we're running a little bit short on time, and I know Jill's going to speak next. But in your PowerPoint, I've listed some of the ways that you can really help to foster inclusion with drum groups or drumming experiences. For the DHH population, really important to use a communication style that provides equal access and equal understanding. So, total communication, and sometimes really more gestural for some students who may be needed at that level. Make sure that there's a sense of security and safety. Our D, R, U, M, our R is respect, and we always talk about that at the very beginning: respect for our hearing, and respect for our ears, and respect for each other, because we all hear differently, and some of us are really sensitive. So we do like a check. Okay, are you going to be turning the volume down on yours? Are you going to be taking off your hearing aid? And everyone sort of figures out what they need to do, and we just make sure that that's taken care of at the beginning of the group. Playful, be silly. There's no wrong way, etc. Cooperation. I think I've kind of talked about a lot of that. One of the things that I have learned is that from year to year, from group to group, I have students who I may have an activity in mind, and I really need to know that for that student to be successful and to feel positive, I have to find the most basic way for them to be part of that. So everything can have a beginning. You can take an activity and it can start in a very fundamental way and it can build, and some of the students are going to get bored when it's just trying to keep a steady beat. You've got kids who are wanting to really jump ahead, who have some experience or want to play more advanced rhythms. That's okay. We're doing this together. So let's make sure that whoever wants to be the one gets to just be the one, and that's a really important role. And thank you for being the one, because that one is the one who keeps the steady beat. So just making sure that everyone has a place to kind of fit in and be successful. I do try to use activities and games that incorporate sign language, movement and gestures, facial expression, body language, all the things that we use and our students are used to and very comfortable with using. Encourage what works, accept changes from what you had planned, and be ready to move on to something else. I have a list of ideas for each session, and I just kind of realize as I'm going through, okay, with this one I think we're done with that. Let's move on. They're just not connecting with it, or they're bored after a couple of minutes. So, you really have to have a lot of things in mind and have your backup. I think just real quickly, I want to talk about appreciation a little bit. You can read through this, and a lot of that is sort of what you say to make sure that everyone feels like they are contributing. Did you notice how Jim created a new movement with the scarves? That felt like we were all really listening with our eyes, ears, and bodies today. I really appreciated how so-and-so helped so-and-so really figure out the rules to that game or whatever. This one is important. Reinforce the feeling of community by acknowledging and thanking those who help make sure all perspectives and experiences are considered. Thank you, Mr. S., for showing us a way to feel the beat even more. I am very, very, very fortunate that I have someone who helps to assist and co-lead the group with me who is a deaf adult. And he comes over from the other site and we co-lead the group together, and that has been so helpful and important to me because we are equal partners. And I may have an idea or an activity, and he's been doing it long enough now, we're in our second year together, where he'll kind of see where I'm going with something, and he'll be able to go, you know, I think for some of the students, they're going to have a better experience with it if we do it this way, or if we change a little bit. So he's able to offer me a live, in-the-moment deaf perspective. And sometimes we'll do an activity, and I'll think, oh, that didn't go over so well. And I'll ask him, you know, what did you think about that? And he'll be like, that was the most fun I've ever had. So we really use each other as a resource. And that is, I'm very lucky. I don't think everyone would be in a position to be able to do that. But I think it's been very helpful to our group's success. So how has it evolved? It has evolved. And every year it's different, and it's continuing to be different from year to year, really based on the students in the program, how many of them have had drum group before, which students maybe are going to be struggling with a lot of attentional issues or sensory issues. So it has really evolved into an ever-changing experience. DHH Drum Club, feel the beat. I know that was really quick, and I apologize for going through that so quickly, but I want to make sure that we've got time for the other activities we have planned. Any questions at this point from anyone? Okay. Let's switch this over.
There we go. I get a drum roll, I give myself one, so. I graduated from Illinois State 28 years ago, and I was a deaf ed and a dance ed major. And when I left there, I thought, I am going to go to the East Coast or the West Coast, and I'm going to do a dance therapy program, and I am just going to change the world. And I interviewed with NIA, and here I am. I'm doing the same job I interviewed for then, and I love it. And I never really thought about where it would take me, but I always knew in the back of my mind I was going to do something with music or dance somehow. Well, Dr. Scherer, who, if you don't know her, you should, has a wealth of knowledge that we all need to grasp onto right now, because she has so much in her head that we all need to be taking pieces of. She came and presented to our NIA program, and in talking about her life that I had never heard the story she told, I didn't know she went to Northwestern on an organ piano scholarship. I didn't know all of the things about her, but she started talking about memory and language development and music and rhythms and where the research is right now in the world. And that very same year, I think she was going off to Geneva to talk about Switzerland, Geneva. I mean, she is going the world talking about this. And it must have been just the right time in my life, because I had just finished some college programming. If any of you know me, I was already bored and needed something else to do. And it just hit that I need to do something now with my dance, music-y background and with my students. So I started working with her because I was already consulting with her on some of our students, specifically one who was above average intelligence, but couldn't retain two things. She was the kind of kid when you're spelling a word, you can't even do T-I-O-N at the end. You can't do the I-N-G. But we've got a kid who performance-wise is testing well over 120, 130. And she was so fascinated by her, as were we, because we were just struggling with how to even communicate with this student. So I developed Memorcussion. Memorcussion is memory and percussion. Dr. Scheer had said that they noted in so many of our students who had this normal intelligence that where they were really lacking when they did the 3-year MDC testing were in things like memory, span, and sequence. And typically high school students should get like 7. We're talking about kids who were getting 3. So like I said, ING was a challenge. TION was a challenge. And she and I discussed how maybe we could come up with something where we would use music to improve memory. And as we talked about it, she believed that the repeated performance that we all do, how many of you in here played a band instrument, an orchestra instrument, or sang in choir? How many of you can probably still play those notes when you see it? Black dots on lines and spaces don't have anything to do with what your fingers do. But when you see them, your fingers do it. When you see them, your voice knows where to go. And probably many of you, like me, can still play many of your piano pieces and you haven't looked at the music for how many years. For some reason, we memorize music and musical symbols that don't mean the thing we do with them in a totally different way than we do other things. You know, looking at an F on a space of a line doesn't mean anything about the F on a piano. They're not related. They don't have the same picture. But we transfer those symbols into a whole different symbol system when we put it together. So as anyone who was around me at that point knows, I'm kind of like Doran. I got this passion burning, and the idea and my excitement turned into a research project. But I was kind of like him. I'm like, well, do I go buy drums? Do I go take every class there is? But I didn't really want to wait to do that. So I started working with her about what should I at least pre-test? What should we be working on? And I started looking into the drum circle things, therapy, grants. I really wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go. I ran into Doran at a drum class I took because of an ITHY grant. And so I developed this, and in January of 12, I started using it with 7 students, 3 who were Deaf Plus, CP, wheelchair, autism spectrum, all sorts of things, 4 who were regular deaf students with this memory issue. They didn't have the memory span or sequence that they should have had for their age. Those were the ones I targeted. Interestingly enough, of course, when those students got to start making these cool drums and other students in our program saw they were doing it, wanted to do it, so it became kind of a thing we would do in other rooms as well, but I wasn't doing the real testing and the constant interaction with the other students. It didn't take long. I was using the time that you take in the beginning of a period to take attendance and go over the day's things. I was using time at the end of a class after we'd had a test. So it wasn't like I wasn't doing a class or an hour-long thing like Doran. I was doing 10 minutes a day, and I block schedule every other day, and if we missed a day because of special or something, we missed a day. The hypothesis was, if students would repeatedly practice reading symbols that would correspond, they would learn to correspond them to hand movements, then they would be able to memorize these rhythm patterns. We would work on how to use metacognition to talk about how to get rid of the symbols so that they were memorizing. I tied that kind of memorizing to what you do when you are supposed to be studying for a test. If you look at a book and you already know the first 3 sentences, you don't look at them again because you've already got those. So it became a study of how to memorize symbols that would transfer into how do you just memorize in general. And we hoped that it would increase their span and their memorization of sequences. So I'm going to let you take the same pre-test the students did. We did 3. We did a symbol span, a symbol sequence, and then just general memorization because we wanted to make sure that we were testing these students who had regular memory. You'll need a piece of paper. On this first one, if you want to number 1 to 10, symbols that you know as letters and numbers are going to come up on the screen, and they're going to be increasing length. You need to write down what you see, but you can't cheat. You can't write until the screen comes up that says write. So I'll let you hold your pencil. I wouldn't even let the kids hold the pencils. They had to put them down on the table. And when I initially did this, I had cards. And I would pick up the cards, and that was their signal to pick up their pencil. Once I made the PowerPoint, it obviously became much easier to test. But this is going to come up, and it's going to vanish in the 3 seconds that I gave them. Okay, so we'll start. So your first one is going to be 1 symbol. Your second one's 2, 3. Do it until you can't do it anymore. All right. The next one is a sequence test. We're going to go through the colors to make sure everyone knows where they are. For the students, they actually had to touch the card. And it was important to me that they do them in the order I said them. So we're looking at that. In that last test, I would sometimes give a student some credit for something, even if they missed one but got like 3 more. Sometimes that would happen. Like they'd say IXN, they'd miss an H, and they'd say R8F. That's still pretty good, 6 out of 10 or something. So I'm going to be reading off colors, and actually this is when I'm going to take, I think it will be easiest for you if you watch me sign and say, because I think there's going to be a delay. So you will watch me sign and say the colors. At that point, everyone should be, your honors, Scout's honor here. You're pointing at the colors in order. When you realize you break down, just give yourself a number. I'll tell you each number beforehand. So like if we're on number 5 and you can't point in order anymore, just give yourself the 4 because you got the 4 right. Okay? I think once we see it. All right, so let's go through here. We've got tan, brown, yellow, green, white, red, blue, purple, pink. Is this blue or no? It's supposed to be blue. It's blue on the screen. Sorry. Orange, gray, and black. Okay, so this one's supposed to be blue. Okay? So on you're not writing anything. You're just touching in the air to the right sequence. Okay? Number 1, orange. Number 2, green, blue. Number 3, red, pink, white. Number 4, yellow, orange, brown, green. Number 5, black, tan, purple, green, red. Number 6, yellow, blue, gray, white, black, purple. Number 7, pink, gray, yellow, green, tan, brown, orange. Number 8, red, blue, black, purple, brown, gray, white, yellow. Are we pretty much done? That was number 8. If you got the one before it, that would be number 7. This is an interesting test with the students. When they hit their limit, they start doing the last ones they heard first. So then they're really messed up because they probably really did remember the first 3, but they're grasping for what they know. So like, on number 6, yellow, blue, gray, they probably knew yellow, blue, gray, but then they heard white, black, purple, so they start with purple and they're messed up. But I think that's probably common for all of us. All right, the next one's a shower game. Probably most of the women in the house have played it. You bring out the tray of the baby things, or you bring out the tray of the wedding things. You open it up for 30 seconds, okay? So on your paper, there are 16 items. When I first did the test, I started with 12, and this is very interesting because object memory wasn't where these kids were lacking. Dr. Scheer had found that on previous evaluations. And I put out 12 items thinking that was going to be challenging. For some of the students it was. I had someone hit 11 on the first time. So I felt like I couldn't really post-test with 12 items. I also had an interesting situation where we had a hard of hearing girl come to our program to observe. She was thinking about becoming a deaf ed teacher. So it was right when I started this, I used her as a control. To show she had normal intelligence, didn't have any memory lapses. So when I was doing their pre-testing, she happened to be there watching. I said, would you take this with me? And she hit either 11 or 12. So I decided I had to up it to 16 for the post-test. So you're getting the 16 test. So you're looking for 16 items. Memorize them. It's going to go away in 30 seconds and write down as many as you can. If you want an added challenge, see if you can remember where they were. I didn't count that, but I'm sorry how dark it is. This is a pumpkin down here in the corner. Can't see him at all? Maybe. Will the lights help? I don't know how to do that, do you? Okay, we have tree, eggs, keys, triangle, star, dress, ice cream, crayons, bird, heart, sailboat, flower, boots, leaf, hammer, and jack-o'-lantern. Okay, so write what you remember. Or count in your head. I mean, you don't have to write them down. I'm not collecting these, obviously. Yeah. I developed this with the high school population in mind because it's the students we were targeting. I currently have a new passion of EI. I'm in the ISU program, so I've really tried to think, as I was developing it, of ways that itinerants could use it. I'm like, not everyone has a whiteboard or a chalkboard in the room. I made like those shoe things, and I made cards that they could use the symbols in that you'll see later. With EI, I had my dad paint drums instead of designing them in their colors. And we would work on red, blue instead of right, left with a 2-year-old. So you need to just take this and think of ways that you would, be able to use it. It may not be your thing. It may not be memorcussion for you, but it may be something else that you think of today. So I hope you can think of ways that you could use rhythms and of memorizing patterns. Good news. No expensive equipment was necessary. Actually, like Doran said, I started out with our hands on our table. I didn't have drums yet. I had this idea. I'd been sending stuff out to people all over, and actually the pattern of drum that you have in your set of copies today was sent to me by a guy from Wisconsin who said, hope you can use this. I saw that. I thought, we got a wood shop. I've got kids in woods. I've got interpreters and kids who love to color. We can make these drums. I can go buy tape at Menards. And that's, my drums came from this. They're scraps of wood and they're clear packing tape. And that's what's on that form that you got in your box. I did buy some other drums at the same time because I started doing some other things with percussion. But it really became a neat kind of a cross-curricular project. I had kids that were in a photography class with me that were the Deaf Plus kids. We found patterns on lines of things like the cubs, the bulls, things that they loved. And rather than coloring the drums, they cut out things from the computer, glued them on, and made their drum. So my students had their own drums. They made them. The drums I made for you today, I made. But like this is a student's drum whose passion is the cubs. And it's from a computer printout. But we talked about how to make a pattern go together. If you wanted to take it to the higher level kids, it'd be a great project for tessellations. Everyone always just prints out tessellations. It'd be a beautiful drum. No musical experience is necessary for the thing I'm doing because we're really looking at just writing rhythms on the board that the students build. You don't have to build them. We started out doing 4-beat rhythms like these, and they got up to doing 12-beat rhythms where we could erase and they could get through it. The kids love it. The better news is the kids do love it. They asked, like when people would come into the room, I'd be like, oh, do you want to show someone? Oh, yeah, we need to show them, and that kind of thing. They were really proud of it. The things that they really learned a lot about weren't things I expected. These Deaf Plus students, I do just a chart, so it's a grid. The first time I had one of the students come up to the board, it looked like Halloween teeth. He had no concept of drawing